Hello everyone, I think I'm live. Um, Welcome to the True Paranormal. Today we're going to be discussing last week's Friday article, which was Beardo Live Fake versus Real Part 3. I have just finished, well not just finished, yesterday I finished writing Part 4, which is a shorter article than what this one was. This one goes from page 13 of notes to page 18 of notes. And was a bit of an awkward one to write. So, in terms of doing it as a live stream, I think for this article, the best thing to do, instead of reading it out point by point, kind of like what I have done for previous live streams, I will instead read out the question that is asked or the statement that's given. Basically, anything that I've quoted, I'll read out and I'll give my own thoughts on it. If you want to hear the thoughts of everyone who was involved, then please go and watch Beardo's live stream or read through the article that I wrote and published last Friday, which was Beardo Live Fake versus Real Part 3. But yeah, for this video, because it's such a lengthy thing, and yeah, it's basically, it'll take way too long for a video if I basically read through the article or read through and narrate the live stream, but instead I'll give my own thoughts on the points discussed. But for this particular segment of Beardo's live stream, it starts from when Kev from Kevka Paranormal joins. I will, if anything's asked directly to a person, I will read out their response. It would be rude of me not to, as it's a question directed to them. Yeah, so Kev joins, and he explains that he's been investigating for 15 years, and he's done residential investigations, and he's investigated random locations, and he's trying to find if ghosts are real, and that he's doing it from a skeptical and scientific aspect, and that he's open-minded when he investigates, and that he wants to find the truth regardless of what that is, whether real, psychological, or physical. One thing I have to say about Kev in particular, through this live stream, I really appreciate how much he kind of looks at things from a psychological angle. Him and Kenny Biddle both, I find, out of everyone who discusses in the live stream, so the guests involved throughout the entire live stream, you had Paranormal by the Sea, although they do leave within about an hour of the stream, maybe an hour and a half. Then you've got Paul from Ghosts on Trent. You've got Justin from the Paranormal Monkey podcast. Obviously, Beardo from Beardo Gets Scared. You've got Joe Vitale from Entity 7 Paranormal. And you've got Kev Kerr from Kev Kerr Paranormal. And you've got Kenny Biddle as well. So they're all the guests. And out of all of those, I would say that Kenny and Kev are probably the most similar in regards to how they answer a lot of the questions, because they both look at it from a rational, skeptical, psychological angle, and they will bring in other factors like that, which people, I feel, don't tend to discuss with the paranormal. And yeah, so it starts off with Beardo asking, Kev, have you ever walked out of a location and thought that's haunted or potentially haunted? Kev answers by saying a couple, and there are a couple that he thought needs further investigation and needs looking at properly. And he left a confidential National Trust location thinking that they didn't do enough at all. They were there for 3 nights, and on the 3rd night they could just sit there quietly and hear things happen. He believed that they saw a small apparition while investigating, and the kid reacted at the same time to this. And he heard footsteps, and they heard the footsteps to the point where they thought someone was in the room with them, or in the room that they were hearing the footsteps from. And they thought lots could have been done there to test and to get more data, and that other places, it's not like that, it's flat, and they don't get anything. And then after Kev answers that, Kenny Biddle joins, which is an hour and a half through the live stream. And the live stream lasted for about 3 hours. It's why I'm making these videos, why I've written the articles, to try and document it, because I'm aware that the live stream Beardo did, there are many brilliant discussion points raised, but it's all going to get lost within that 3-hour video, and that 3-hour video itself is going to get lost within all the videos that Beardo uploads to YouTube, because he does 2 live streams a week, I believe, at least. So just the live streams alone, it's going to get lower and lower down, harder to find, and then you've got YouTube as a whole, where it's just going to get lost amongst all those videos, and the only way people are going to see it is if it by chance gets recommended. But if you get recommended a 3-hour video, will you watch it? Probably not. So that's why all these articles, because it makes it easier to find, and kind of spreads the message of what they've discussed. But yeah, so my own take on what Beardo's asked in terms of walking out of a location and thinking that's haunted or potentially haunted. I believe that it's not quite that clear cut. I don't think that there is haunted and potentially haunted, or haunted and not haunted. I think that everywhere that has ever been touched by human history is haunted. Again, mildly distracted. I can hear music coming from next door. But yeah, so I believe everywhere that has ever been touched by human history is haunted, or has the potential of being haunted. It's I would say at least 90% chance that there is a spirit there, at least one, because I think you've got haunted, actively haunted, not haunted. That's not quite the scale. It'll be not haunted, haunted, actively haunted. That's from scale of none to a lot. So if it's not haunted, I believe that that's remote locations, countryside locations where people have not been or have not built on, or at least they haven't lived there for hundreds of years. Maybe you'll dig and you'll find some wooden supports of what used to be a farmhouse, but it's only that. You're not going to find, oh, this was a huge villa where loads of people lived, So those locations, I would say, are probably not haunted. And they're probably the locations where you've got, tales of like Roman legions marching across the land. So even then, these types of places might have something, but I think it's very unlikely. Then you've got haunted, which all it takes for someone to be haunted, as far as I'm concerned, is the presence of a spirit. Just one, at least one spirit, and then it's haunted. They don't have to do anything. You don't have to be aware that they're there. It's just the presence of a spirit means it's haunted. And like I say, you might live in a location, everyone's probably visited by that definition, a haunted location, whether they know it or not. Because, like I say, if you've been somewhere, just you having visited means someone else has likely visited. And it means that place probably has a history with people. And it will have been built by people. And those people who built the place may very well be the ones haunting it. Apologies, by the way, for any coughs. I am still ill, which is getting on my nerves, as I've been ill for a month now. But I'm slowly getting there. But yeah, so you've got not haunted, haunted, and then if it's actively haunted, that means people know about the haunting. It means that unexplainable stuff is occurring within the location that is indicating to the presence of a spirit. Now, if that stuff doesn't happen, it doesn't mean that there isn't a spirit there, as I say. It just means that the spirit isn't doing anything, or at least it might not be doing anything, it might not be able to do anything. It doesn't mean they're not there. It's like I could sit quietly in a room and not do anything. It doesn't mean I'm not in the room, it just means that I'm not doing anything in the room. And that's how I view spirits, just as invisible people, which is a very oversimplified way of looking at it, but it's a good way to look at it when explaining various questions around haunting behaviour and why things happen at certain moments. So you have not haunted, haunted, and then actively haunted. So when Beardo asks if Kev has been somewhere that's haunted or potentially haunted, Beardo looks at it through a lens of it's haunted or it's not haunted. He has a very a mindset which is very it is or it isn't. There isn't really a maybe about it, because he has said on live streams and in videos that he's been to locations and he's walked out and been like, no, that's not haunted. And even Kev in his answer says that he's been to places where it's flat and they get nothing. That doesn't mean it's not haunted. It just means that the spirit either doesn't have the energy to be able to interact with you, or it means that they're not doing anything. The spirit doesn't have to do things. It's why the paranormal is such a tough subject when it comes to replication, because at least the way I explain it is regarding human psychology. Spirits are technically humans. Humans are spirits. just in a body, as it were. So, when dealing with human psychology, the psychology of a spirit, in theory, would be something at play. So if you asked a person a question or asked someone to do something, you could have 10 people in a room. You could ask those 10 people all to do the same thing. They're all going to likely respond in a different way. Some will do it, some won't do it. The ones who do it will do it in a slightly different way to one another. And that's the same with spirits, I think. That when you speak to the spirits and you ask them to do something such as making a noise, for instance, different spirits will make different noises. Different spirits will make them at different volumes, different places, different proximities. And then you'll have some which don't make them at all, or you'll have some which decide to wait for ages and then make the noise, possibly to try and mess with the investigators. I don't know how much personality as such that the spirits would have, but that could be something at play. Personality and psychology could very well be at play with spirits, in which case it's far more complicated than simply saying, is it haunted, is it not haunted, or trying to get replication, because you're not going to be able to, unless you kind of somehow manage to strike up, if the behaviours and psychologies are at play, if you strike up somewhat of a friendship, as it were, with the spirit, then maybe you'll get replication. But this is all just theoretical around the concept of spirits essentially acting the same way as humans, because humans are spirits and spirits were humans, kind of thing. Obviously not all spirits, depending on your belief, were humans, because you do have potentially other entities. But even then, in a lot of how they're portrayed, they are portrayed with personality and personality akin to humans, just in different form with different ability, and different wants, needs, purposes, etc. So I do think that will be a factor and will play a part with any investigation. So yeah, so I think, like I say, to answer, have I been to a location thought that's haunted or potentially haunted? I have, but I think that everywhere that I will go, unless there is literally nothing there. For instance, when I've been to Scotland, you see large patches of nothing there. That's somewhere where, in those patches of nothing, it's probably not haunted. But everywhere else, which has got a human there, would be haunted, probably. Like I say, you'd have at least one spirit. Or at least high chance. The only way I think that there wouldn't be at least one is if it's a really old location. Like really, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, like ancient world type old. Depends on how long the spirit can last for after becoming independent of a body. So yeah, so Kenny's then introduced, and he introduces himself as the chief investigator for the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, and he's been doing the job for several years. Now he's freelanced for Skeptical Inquirer magazine and writes articles and produces videos where he investigates claims of the paranormal, such as ghosts, aliens, UFOs, monsters, religious mysteries, and he approaches it all from a scientific and skeptical point of view and publishes the results. Oh, thank you very much, Justin. So you've thrown me off now a little bit. It really does mean a lot to hear nice comments like that from people, because it's not often that people comment on what I do. So when people do share the articles and do comment on anything regarding the blog and the articles I do, and especially saying about the level of detail and stuff, that is something that I do strive to achieve with all the articles that I do. So yeah, thank you very much, Justin. So anyone who's watching, please go and check out Justin from the Paranormal Monkey podcast and watch their stuff. Because he contributed a great number of points as well to the live streams, and he's completely thrown me off with my what I was reading. So thank you. So Kenny also said he tours and lectures and workshops across America, And then he teaches about photo anomalies and editing and adds special effects. So see, again, he's still completely throwing me off. So, again, he tours and lectures and does workshops across America, and he teaches about photo anomalies, and he teaches about the editing side of things and how to add special effects, which are often used in the viral videos. Gonna have a drink now to try and get my composure back, because, like I say, it's not often people kind of comment really nice things. But whenever they do, it does kind of throw me for a loop because I don't expect it. All right. Yeah, so the next point, a comment came in from. Sorry, again, still ill, so still, if I do have the cough, I do apologise for that. So a comment came in from World to Rights, which said, Kevka, what do you think to disingenuous vid descriptions? Terrifying paranormal, but nothing happens, it's very annoying. Now, my own thoughts on that, I do agree that it is annoying. I have a number of times when I scroll through Facebook or YouTube, there are, or even when I go on Google with news headlines, just in general, you get typical dramatic-ish, intriguing image with a title which alludes to something, which then gets your mind to thinking, oh, is it this thing? And then you click it. So yeah, it is annoying because then you read through the article, and a lot of the times with these articles, the thing you want, it's right at the very end as well, which is sneaky because it is all tactical to try and get you to read through it all. But yeah, so I don't like the disingenuous thing at all. However, I do think it's necessary, but not to the extent that I have seen. And for this, luckily this is actually in view. I think in my journal, you're going to get a sneak peek of a more recent journal entry now. And I've immediately opened it up on the right page. So there was a period of time fairly recently where I was getting a bit annoyed about all the clickbaity type titles that I was seeing. So I don't watch many paranormal related things. I'm watching more now that I'm doing the database because it's all relevant to that. I need to kind of be somewhat in the know. But stuff like, in terms of TV, I watch Most Haunted. I then obviously stopped watching Most Haunted and then watch snippets here or there just to, again, keep up with it a little. Help My House is Haunted I've watched a bit of. Just anything I've done an article on with that I've seen. I've not seen a great deal outside of that. Other programs I've not seen. I've seen the program on the 28-day cycle on Netflix, which was interesting. I've not seen anything else though regarding like ghost adventures or things. I've not seen that because I'm aware that it's not particularly honest or genuine. So in terms of YouTube content as well, I haven't watched a great deal. I've watched a lot of stuff from Beardo. I've watched a lot of stuff from Don't Scare Claire, but I've not seen a great deal of anything else, mainly because of time. So at the moment, the articles are out. It takes a lot of time to do that, which unfortunately doesn't leave a great deal of time for watching other videos that I may want to watch. So usually I only watch those when I'm eating some food or something, just anything that isn't writing an article when I have spare time. It's watching paranormal videos. But one of the channels when I was fairly early in with doing my research was the Overnight channel. And they were an intriguing channel to me. And were kind of the first experience I had of the paranormal on YouTube. And that one of those where I'm like, yeah, on the fence. I don't know. I know that there have been times where Beardo has pointed out times where he's like, oh, they're fake, look, they're doing stuff. But whenever he's done that, it seems to not be Overnight team members faking things. It's other teams such as Twin Paranormal, or I can't remember what the latest team was that he's recently had done which were with Overnight, but there was one particular person where he was pointing them out. But as a result of watching those videos, I do get recommended their videos, and it reached a point where, regarding the clickbaity titles and things, it's reached a point with Overnight now where I'm like, I've had enough of it. And some of the examples, which I have written down in my journal, are the night we caught a skinwalker at Navaso Ranch, full series. We found the Devil's Door in Haunted Hospital, and then star, terrifying star. Our most terrifying night at Haunted Hill House, star, demon encountered, star. Oh, I want to see what this comment is now. Let's have a look. Now, don't worry, you don't have to apologise for throwing me off. But yeah, you kind of have done it again, but it's all good. Yeah, that's very fair. Yeah. But yeah, thank you very much, Justin, for your really kind comments. It really does mean a lot. But yeah, there's a lot of paranormal stuff in general, and yeah, there's a lot of. I say, like, with Overnight in particular, I watched those to begin with because I was intrigued. Plus, there was someone I work with who is a fan of Overnight. He has their T-shirts and things, so we'd often talk about it. But Elton in particular is an intriguing person to me because he seems like someone who does want to do it legitimately, although he does do things in investigations where I'm like, you shouldn't do that, because he gets too much wrapped in the I'm with friends, I'm having a laugh kind of angle, which I'm like, yeah, you've gone too much like that, because then you're muddying up your own evidence, and your own experiences and things, and people won't know what to believe. There you go. Briefly saw the mess that was the living room. But yeah. So he messes up the own investigation because he likes to play jokes on the team, which then leaves it into a doubt of, is this Elton playing jokes or is it legitimate, which, not great. But yeah, so continuing with some more of the titles that Overnight have done regarding the clickbait stuff. If I can find decent ones. Oh, there we go. Overnight in a particular forest. Viewer warning. Terrifying proof of demons. We opened a portal to hell is another one. I'm just like, there's things there which. 2 Nights in Haunted Asylum star. We got a demonic attachment star. And that kind of those titles are not great at all, because they are misleading. A lot of that, when they're saying about encountering a demon, etc., there's no proof that they've encountered demons. Sure, they'll say, oh, but we've got evidence, but there's no proof of it. It's not like you're seeing the demon pop up on the screen, etc. So yeah, but it's to the point where it's over dramatic and it seems like films. I know Elton wants to make films, but doing it through a paranormal YouTube channel and advertising, look, this is real. No, if you want to make films, go do films. Don't muddy up the paranormal, as it were. So that's my view on that. But as Kev says here, he thinks that it's a requirement on YouTube for traffic, and he doesn't think it's damaging to the paranormal. I do agree that it is a requirement on YouTube for traffic. Absolutely. If you look at YouTube videos, they can be on completely different topics. You can have a YouTube video on... I'm trying to think of examples now. I watch a lot of reaction things to TV programs and films. So you can have a reaction video to a TV program, and you can have a paranormal video, and both will be very similar in terms of the thumbnail and the title, because you'll have the thumbnail, which is usually whoever's involved with making the video. It'll be their face will be in the thumbnail, and you'll have something to do with the location looking, or the film looking all dramatic and intriguing, and then the title, you'll see it won't be all capitals necessarily. The overnight ones I read out, I believe, were all capitals, but you'll have certain words in there in all capital, and it will seem a bit not like a lie, but it will, you know what I mean. It'll be clickbaity, and it will be the same kind of formatted sentence as a title for both those different types of content. And as a result, everything you're recommending on YouTube all looks quite samey because it's all designed in the same way to get those clicks and to get people watching it. So I do absolutely agree with Kev that it is a requirement for traffic. However, I don't agree with him saying that he doesn't think it's damaging to the paranormal. With those examples I read out from Overnight, for instance, I think that they're good examples of how it can be damaging. Because when it comes to anything that you... Let's hypothetically say that the Overnight channel are legitimate, just for a hypothetical. If they were, and that's how they are advertising their videos and promoting their videos, with the dramatic image and all capital titles saying they encountered demons, etc., I think that's damaging to the paranormal because, as I explained, I look at those titles and I just kind of sigh, feel fed up, and I don't click it because it's just more of the same dramatic, over-the-top things, and that's not really how the paranormal is. So even though they may not fake in their videos, the title is misleading to how the paranormal is. Now, granted, it could be, and I believe Beardo discusses this at some point. I don't know if he discusses in this segment I'm discussing or an earlier or later one, but it could bring in that audience, as Beardo has explained, and the audience which is looking for proof of demons, etc. And it could show them, look, it's not all demons and spooky stuff. It is quite plain. You get little bits and pieces here and there, but this is how it really is. And that could be an advantage to doing that kind of title. But I think in the grand scheme, because it is misinterpreting the paranormal, it's kind of portraying it as this kind of Hollywood film type thing when it's really not. I think that isn't genuine, and that isn't quite right. So it kind of relates to, in Friday's article, there's a discussion point around the ethics around home footage, like, people who send footage to debunkers that are wondering, is this a family member? And they have kind of a personal attachment. And there's debate around that, around the ethics of, is it okay to then lie to them and say, it is, if you want to believe it's a family member, believe it's a family member. If you don't, then if you aren't too fussed, then I can tell you the truth behind it. And in Friday's article, I do have a good bit of a discussion about those ethics and about how, in the grand scheme of things, even though it may seem right to, maintain the lie, as it were, in the short term because it helps them feel better, in the long term, in the grander scope of the paranormal, it could be more damaging because by keeping that person in the dark and by letting them continue to believe the lie, well, the lie is persisting and the truth will then never surface. But that's all Friday's article, but it relates to this because it's kind of the same vein of the of video titles and the clickbait and things. It's like, if it gets you views, is it okay to do it? And when it comes to that kind of thing, I would say no, it's not okay. I think that you need to root it out, because if no one did it, you wouldn't need to do it. The need only exists because people do it. So, yeah, it's one of those where I'm just like, I don't think it's necessary. Of course, at the moment, because everyone's doing it, it's necessary for YouTube traffic, but I do think at the same time it is damaging to the paranormal. Which is a shame. It's one of those where it can be both necessary and harmful. It's sad. But yeah, Kev then explains about the algorithm, and it doesn't matter how good your content is. It's all about getting people into the first step. Which again, I disagree to an extent there. I think if your content's good, that's what gets you returning viewers. But yeah, it's an iffy one, because if your content's not brilliant, then yeah, people will, through the clickbait, they'll watch your video, but you need your content to be good in order to get them to stay and in order to get them to return. Yeah, so Beardo explains he's been guilty of the clickbait type things, and he's put up a thumbnail, which wasn't a blatant lie, but it's the closest he's ever done. He explains that the thumbnail was a Ouija board that was on fire, with the title being "The most terrifying Ouija board I've ever seen in my life, video evidence." Yeah, I agree there, Justin. Yeah, clickbait is absolutely awful, and yeah, we get possessed by pretty much. It's like one of the overnight ones. I'll have a quick look. There was one which is actually very, very similar to what you've just written. If I can quickly find it in my little notebook. There we go. Yes. 2 nights in haunted asylum, we got a demonic attachment. So yeah, that is the kind of clickbait you get with because it doesn't happen. It never happens. So when that sounds like, I think it's necessary for YouTube, but I don't think that people should do it, and it's only necessary because people do it. It's a successful tactic, so everyone's done it, and therefore they've made it a requirement. If everyone just stopped doing it, you wouldn't have to. But no one's going to stop, which is because it's successful, which is a shame. Yeah, so Beardo said he's been guilty of clickbaiting, and that video was actually a Smug Puppy video he was debunking, where all the tricks could be seen, and so people called him out for clickbait. But Beardo said that if it was real, then it was terrifying, so it was kind of true. And as a result, it got people to watch the video, and so he thinks clickbait can do good if it's an honest investigation, such as saying demon in the title and finding no demon, which then brings that audience and shows them there aren't really demons, which is what I'd explained earlier. So I'm glad that I've explained the right part of the video there. And then Justin from the Paranormal Monkey podcast said that the alternative is being honest, and the title would be 5 hours and nothing happened, and that's the reality. That he fully understands clickbait and trying to get people in. Some will say it's faking, but it isn't. If the content is genuine, then you're just trying to get the initial few viewers to watch the video. The alternative is no one watches the video, no one subscribes, and then everyone only watches the fake channels. And he makes an excellent point there, because that is very true. If the true paranormal stuff didn't do the clickbait stuff, the fake paranormal is always going to do the clickbait, and as it is a successful tactic, it does mean that everyone would then only watch the fake channels. So it does kind of counter what I was arguing earlier about how it is in the long run worse for the paranormal. So it's an interesting little debate about whether or not clickbait is beneficial to the paranormal, because on one hand, where it's advertising the fake side and making it seem like the fake side, it also can take viewers away from those fake videos, because the people who want to watch the fake videos will actually find the real stuff instead. And yeah, and in terms of him saying the honest thing would be the title saying 5 hours and nothing happened, it's quite funny, because when he put that, when he said that, when I first started out with my paranormal research, it was a funny thing, because I started out from an investigation side. I wasn't doing the database as it currently is. I wasn't doing all the research into locations and various aspects of the paranormal. I instead decided to set up a camera in the cellar for an hour each night, for an hour just because it only ran for an hour before it ran out of battery. And then I uploaded just the raw footage, no editing at all. I uploaded that to YouTube, titled it something like Cellar Investigation 1 or something like that, or Cellar Investigation 2, depending on which one it was. Very, very plain, no title, like no thumbnail. The thumbnail was just the footage. Like I said, no editing, and it wasn't even me in the room because I'd gone to bed. It was just an overnight 1 hour worth of night vision footage of my cellar, which I think is dodgy. And I uploaded the raw footage to YouTube, and yet only 1 or 2 people watch. No one watches it. Because it's an hour of footage of literally just watching the cellar with nothing happening, with the occasional scratching sound, and metallic clinking is another noise that I'd found occurred down there. And then when I last year investigated the 28-day cycle in this room, again I did a similar thing. I had 2 cameras going. I had one tablet recording, doing a Facebook Live, and I had my normal camcorder recording night vision, not live on that one. But because I had the light switched off, you couldn't see anything on the live stream aside from the occasional flashing light from a device, like cat balls, bear, whatever that I had around the room. And obviously you couldn't see anything on the live stream, so everyone who's watching the live stream was like, "What? Why are you streaming it live?" And then I was like, "Well, I'm streaming it live because then you can sync up the night vision footage with the live footage." And then you have an actual 1000% true, this is what happened because it's live bit of footage and the recording, and you know that nothing will be tampered in the recording because it syncs up perfectly regarding the sounds to the live. But everyone was confused by that, and then when I uploaded, because again, no editing at all, just uploaded it all to YouTube under just 28-day cycle, investigation 1, investigation 2, etc. And only a couple of people watched it because it's just, one of them was just darkness with just hearing me in the background, and then the other one was night vision footage of me just sitting in a room, occasionally speaking while holding my hand on a planchet of a Ouija board just to see if anything happened, and calling out to all sorts of things in the later videos of those. So it was interesting. It was very, very interesting to see no one watching it, because why would you? Again, no thumbnail, no catchy dramatic title. So what Justin says regarding accurate titling and images and no one watching it absolutely is true, because I've done it. And then Joe says, from NT7 Paranormal, he wonders how many times a team can go somewhere and almost die. Which again is very, very true. That is another title which is often kind of done where people are like, "Oh, we've been to such a place and we almost died." They haven't. They never do. They never get anywhere close to nearly dying. Although I will say, I have seen a live stream from the Ghost of Britain team where they could have titled it that and it would have been accurate, because they went to an abandoned location and there were people within that location who they discovered, and one of them was holding, I think it was a bat, I'm not sure. They were possibly on drugs, probably were, because they were kind of at the entrance to a basement-y bit. So the Ghost Britain team accidentally stumbled upon a drug den with these 2 women who walked out, one of which I'm pretty sure was holding a bat. And it's like Beardo could title one of his things as he almost died, because he was threatened by people, again, at a haunted at an abandoned location. Which is why, if ever anyone investigates abandoned places, it's always best to not go by yourself. You need to take other people, just safety in numbers. Yeah, so Joe then says that every week a team almost dies, but they don't get anywhere near to that. And goes, and they'll put it into the title and it's false advertising, which, yes, it is. But news companies always do that as well. It is the way of the world and this kind of stuff. And Kenyon said he doesn't think there are just two extremes where you either say it's the worst place they've been or nothing happens. So there he's saying that what people have discussed up to this point is that there are just the two extremes in how you can title a video, where you either say, oh my god, we nearly died, or nothing happened. But Kenny proposes a third option, where he says that they could just say that they investigated such a house. Which again is kind of what I explained that I did with the seller videos. And he said he recently came across a video from the Conjuring House from a few years ago where the title was false advertising and deceptive, and said that they found a body when they didn't. But he did watch the whole video, but he didn't watch the whole video because of the clickbait angle. He watched it because he's been in the game long enough to know clickbait when he sees it. So he was watching it just to see what the outcome was, not necessarily because he was affected by the clickbait. And then Kev says that there are ethical limits of what can be described, that media in general, you click on news homepage and every headline is manipulative. You click on it and you find it's actually quite boring, but it's just part of the whole world, which I agree. It is nothing new. Clickbait has existed for a good bit of time now. I remember when studying, I believe it was A-level English that I learnt this, because I did English language, GCSE and A-level. I believe it was A-level when we went more into this. Could be wrong though, could be GCSE. But one of the things that we would do, and what our teacher would have us do, is she would print out newspaper snippets, like newspaper articles, and she would hand those to us, and what we would do for that lesson is we would look through and we would identify various techniques that were used regarding, stuff like alliteration, onomatopoeia, and things like that. But we'd also look a bit deeper into it and pick out specific words and see if there's any patterns and anything relating to anything, and seeing why words were used as opposed to other words, because the exact word that is used can drastically change how you interpret what is written, and that is what people have been doing for a long time. They are sneaky and manipulative with what they write, and the same goes for titles and video descriptions and thumbnails. It's all a huge bit of kind of a marketing ploy and sales tactic in a way to try and get you to click on whatever it is, or going back to newspapers when you didn't have the internet, you needed to sell newspapers, and as a result you need to have your headline be big, bold, probably short, eye-catching, intriguing. I'm sure that there are probably a certain condensation of points like that which would go around newsrooms, where they'd say, look, is it this, is it this, is it this, great, we're running with it, kind of thing. So it's nothing new. And newspapers, what, 1900, like early 1900s, maybe before then, I'm not sure when the first newspapers were around, but yeah, it's nothing new with clickbait and how things are sneaky to try and get your attention and to drive sales. So Beardo says it's not just part of paranormal, it's everywhere, and there's a difference between a lie and a clickbait, and there's a difference between a lie and clickbait. I agree, there is a difference between a lie and clickbait. Clickbait makes you think it's something when really it's something else, whereas a lie is just blatant, we're telling you it's this thing, but then you find it isn't. So one isn't to do with interpretation, whereas the other one is more clear-cut, right or wrong. And Kenyon says if he does an hour of nothing sitting in the dark, he will title it as that, which, yeah, I think people, again, I think in a perfect world, people would title their things as that, but sadly, that isn't intriguing. Maybe people should, maybe the alternative here and the solution is, if you do an investigation, you should upload the raw footage and just title it as playing, So you have two different versions. You have your dramatic clickbaity-esque video, which you release, and then when that starts dipping in views, maybe then release the raw footage and title that as 5 hours and nothing happened. Or, that's probably a good medium for people to do, because that way you've got the clickbaity entertaining video, but then you also have the true, this is the full length of time we were at this place video, which is absolutely true. Just there's no argument around how true it is. So I think that's probably going to be, I think that's probably a good alternative for teams to do, to release both one for clicks and one for progression of the paranormal. I think is probably the best. Yeah, and Joe says, what they're doing, where they are, but that's it. And Justin from the Paranormal Monkey podcast, I have actually quoted what he says for this particular bit, which I didn't initially quote him for the article. I just wrote it in notes, bullet point notes, but I needed to break down that article in some way, because if you read that, it's a chunky article. So the thing he says, and I will try to read my handwriting as best I can. So Justin from the Paranormal Monkey podcast then says, one thing I think we haven't really talked about is the influence of these fake channels on the general public, because I think it's huge. The thing is, you have members of the public who don't not maybe fully up to speed with a true paranormal investigation or how to do things properly. They see these fake channels. They have, the public have an interest in these kinds of things. The first thing they're probably going to do is go to a ghost event company. They go to the ghost event company, and because I used to work for a ghost event company, I know that people have a completely unreal expectation of what they're going to face when they get to a location. They get there and nothing happens, and so therefore then the ghost event company then feels the need to then provide them with all the gadgets and the gizmos and the Ouija boards and the dowsing rods, or whatever they want to use to make it seem as if they're having a legitimate paranormal experience. But initially, I think a lot of that has come from TV shows and YouTube. I do think that the fakery thing has had an impact on what the general public think about the paranormal. That's a lot of stuff that he says there, but it's all an extremely good point around event companies. And I do agree with him. I do think that there's a pressure on event companies because of the fake channels, and that they have to replicate what people have witnessed in what the fake channels experience. So if the people see the fake channels are going to haunted locations and they're hearing tapping, knocking, bangs, they're having doors slammed, they're having ghostly whispers in their ears, the events company is going to feel pressured to replicate that in some way, because their aims is to sell tickets, it is to drive sales. Again, it's the same kind of thing as the newspaper stuff I was on about. It all has this underlying thing of money and making money in sales. And if you go to one of these event companies and nothing happens, you're going to think, oh, that was boring, I'm not going to do that again. And then sales will dip. There's only so many people in the world that can attend these things. And if everyone visits and everyone thinks, oh, that was naff, I'm not going back, then they're not going to go back, and that company is then going to go bust because they're not going to get any money. So they'll feel pressured to try and make it a memorable experience. Now, personally, I think that they can do that without faking things. I think if you explain various techniques, I think it's fine to provide equipment like Ouija boards and things. But I think it's best to explain things like the ideomotor effect. And you explain things like, if you do have cat balls out, explain that about how there's a ball bearing inside, and if it lights up, it could be dodgy batteries. It could be that ball bearing has just, over time, gravity's knocked it down, and that's what's caused it to light up. Same goes for the touch-activated bear, that It works in the same way as a cat ball because ball bearings again. So with these things, it's best to explain it, and through that, if you accurately explain the history of a location, if you have a good storyteller leading it, I think is probably what it relies on, because you can have them tell a story about the hauntings and the history of the location, properly set the tone in the atmosphere through that, and then anything from that point that those people do, they're going to be in the zone, as it were. They're going to be not necessarily experiencing paranormal activity, but they're going to have that legitimate experience that they're probably looking for by going to a ghost event company. Sure, they might not walk away thinking, oh, the doors were slamming, the walls were rattling, and all of that stuff, but they'll be thinking, ooh, did you see that shadow I saw? Because that's going to happen regardless. Faking or not, you're in a haunted location, you're probably, at the very least, psychologically, your mind's going to play tricks on you, and you're probably going to see shadows, you're probably going to hear noises. So that's a base no matter what the company's going to do. And the company then can either play into it and go, oh yeah, it probably was a ghost, or they can try and explain it. Now, the way I would go about it is I'd give an explanation, but I would say it isn't necessarily the explanation. Because with certain things like that, you never know for sure unless you can replicate it if it is an explanation or the explanation. If you can replicate, then it's the explanation. If you can't, then it's an explanation. So that's how I would do it if I was running a ghost event company. But I think Justin, again, makes excellent points there about the events companies. And Kenny says that he went to a paid event for the public, and someone's recorder picked up someone shouting. So Kenny had known that there were people shouting on the other side of the building. The recorder picked this up. No one else was aware of the other people. And Kenny pointed out that it was the people that he'd heard. But everyone at the event was like, no, it's a ghost, it's a real EVP. And the events company, the person running the event, then told Kenny to shut up as they'd paid to be there. And they had to give them something as a result of that. And so Kenny left as it was completely dishonest, and he didn't like that they were letting people leave thinking that they'd had a genuine experience, without offering an explanation. Which again, like I said, I think the best way of doing it is to offer an explanation, but not necessarily say it's the reason. Unless it can replicate, then it is the reason. But a good way of events companies doing it is by saying, it could be this is a reason. So, Joe then said he's been to events, REM pods brought out, they light up, they've claimed it to be paranormal. And if another explanation is given, then they won't sell tickets and get the word of mouth advertisement for more people to buy and show up. Which, yeah, I think it is all about the monetary angle of it. It's not necessarily they want to lie and fake things, but it's not necessarily faking, but I don't think that they want to do an event and be dishonest, let's say, about it. But they kind of, in a way, have to be. Or at least they need to not tell the whole truth because they want people to return and they want people to tell their friends, oh my god, go there, it's crazy. So it's a sad way of the world hinging on money. And Paul from Ghosts on Trent then says he works closely with an events company, and before every event starts, they have a chat and explain the chances of seeing an apparition or a shadow figure or anything on TV is slim to none. And if they've come for that, then they've come for the wrong reason. And they pre-warn that expectations should be low, and that they provide equipment, but it's to get them involved and to try new things and creates excitement. And I think some event companies do it just to sell tickets. And I like what he said there, because that right there is an example where it can work and does work, where an events company says to people, look, lower your expectations. Chances of seeing stuff or experiencing a legitimate thing, very low, but here's some cool gadgets that you can mess around with. And I think that that's a good way of doing it. I think that, obviously with the gadgets, as Kenny will later point out, you should explain things like the ideomotor effect. I wouldn't do that beforehand, I would do it afterwards. So if they were using a Ouija board and it started moving, I'd let them do their session and be like, that's cool. And then I'd explain the idiomotor effect, and then I'll probably have them do the session again, just to see if there's any difference between being conscious about it and not conscious about it, in terms of planchette movement. But yeah, absolutely, some just do it to sell tickets. So, Kenny, this is another one I have directly quoted. He then asks to Paul from Ghost on Trent, when you have the talk with people on the tour, do you also explain things like the idiomotor effect and other things like that? Or is it just presented as, here are some spirit gadgets, they could detect paranormal activity, and leave it as that? And, you know, he has a point asking that, and you can kind of see it in his face. I don't know how to interpret his reaction in the video, because I find it interesting, because Kenny is someone who's very skeptical, and kind of, I think, has a high bar for things. I've not spoken to the guy, I don't know him, but from watching that live stream, I think he has quite a high bar for things, with the paranormal, and that he's obviously skeptical and rational about things. So it's good that he's asked that question to Paul. And Paul does say that he just leaves it as that. And the look on Kenny's face is interesting, because it's that look of slight disappointment, slightly being not ashamed, but it's just kind of disappointment and that's too bad. Kind of not. It looks like he wants to say more, but he doesn't. It is kind of that kind of response, which I found interesting. But I think that's kind of been weighing it up. Is it wrong? Is it not wrong? So personally, like I said, I wouldn't leave it as that. I would go I'd explain a little bit of how it works, but then if they're experiencing a particular thing with it, I would then go more into detail, and I would say that planchette from that Ouija board session could very well be moving because of the idiomotor effect. And then I'd run another session with the Ouija board, just to see if there is any impact on if it moves, according to if people are consciously aware that they may be subconsciously moving it. So, for instance, when using a Ouija board, I'm aware of the idiomotor effect, but I've never experienced the planchette move. I've experienced like teeny tiny sudden movements, as it were, but because it's just me with my hand on the planchette, which is immediately breaking one of the rules, but I believe that rule exists purely to get the idiomotor effect into play. But when I do that, I readjust my position to see if I have made any subtle movements which could have knocked the planchette. And every time I've determined, yes, I have slightly moved, like, or relaxed my arm or shoulder or something, and that, as a result, has pushed it a little bit forwards. And so I reset it, and again, because my arm's in an unnatural position, it'll relax again, and it's a thing that I've found time and time again. So Kev says, when at an event, as they're selling tickets, they have to entertain in some way, and it can be done the right way. And there is a team that uses gadgets, but says what it's actually doing, and if they get something, then they say it may not necessarily be a ghost, and say it could be that there could be scientific answers as to what's happening. And they found that they sell more tickets as they're doing it properly and giving a full picture. And he doesn't see the logic of events companies that fake, as there will always be critical thinkers there. And yeah, I agree with him there as well, that I think if you did a legitimate event, that people would still turn up and buy tickets, because you'll always have people who are looking to find what the real paranormal is. I mean, sure, they may have seen something on TV or YouTube which has given them this heightened expectation, but they may then be at that company not to experience that heightened expectation, but instead to do the opposite and be like, that seemed like nonsense on TV. Was it nonsense? I'm going to find out for myself. And they may not think that they can investigate themselves, so they go to someone who can, and they observe. They're more there to observe what is happening as a whole, potentially, rather than investigate themselves. So yeah, so I agree. I think it can always be done legitimately. I think there will be critical thinkers. I think there is an audience for it. But sadly, the YouTube stuff and fake stuff on TV has kind of set a precedent for this is how you make money, and it's not right. But Justin from the Paranormal Monkey podcast says that things are changing and people are taking a more critical stance as a result, and that there are legitimate YouTube channels, and that the legitimate YouTube channels' viewers are going up, and some fake teams' views are going down. And people are tired of being duped, and TV is responding in the UK. And Beardo then said that Danny Robbins is fantastic, and Kieran O'Keefe's always been the golden boy, and that is honest. He thinks that Kieran was the only honest one with Most Haunted, possibly along with Richard Felix, Phil Wyman, and Kieran O'Keefe. And that he said they're the only ones he has the time of day for. And I agree. It's weird because when looking into Most Haunted, because I have done an article on individual team members as one whole on Most Haunted. Not on every team member. So, for instance, I don't think I looked into Phil Wyman. But I had the impression before doing the research that everyone in the early days in particular would have been faking it. I was amazed to find stuff about Richard Felix, which I didn't expect, because I was like, oh, Richard Felix is part of the old team, he was possibly faking things with them. But I found an interview, a written up interview with Richard Felix, where he was explaining his own thoughts on the paranormal and how it works. And through reading that, I was like, he probably really disagreed with the Most Haunted team and what they were doing, because his views are different to what is portrayed in Most Haunted. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And it's good that he has a genuine interest in the paranormal, and he has his own thoughts and opinions and his own theories. And obviously he's done a lot for Derby and for, the paranormal locations there. So I do think he's one of the legitimate ones. Phil Wyman I know little about, but yeah, Kieran O'Keefe is very reputable, I would say. It's why when I did about the Help My House is Haunted team, my evaluation of them was that Ian Lawman, I don't trust. Barry Guy, I'm on the fence with, but leaning towards distrust. And at least I think I was on the fence. I can't remember if I made up my mind on him. He has too much faith in EVPs. That's one thing I remember I took away from that. Because I found a website where he'd uploaded EVPs and said, oh, look, this says this. And I was like, no, it doesn't. That's just garbled nonsense. But then Jane Harris, I found to be possibly the only legitimate team member. But the thing that made me lean towards legitimacy with her was because she has worked with Kieran O'Keefe. I believe possibly on a book or a podcast, there was something like that which she worked with him on. And I don't think Kieran has the time of day for people who he thinks are fake. So, and with her background as well, I'm pretty sure there was stuff to do with her background where I was like, she seems legitimate. Now, does that mean she's legitimate on Help My House is Haunted? Maybe not. I don't know. I've seen videos of them reacting to clips, and that's kind of put them in bad taste for me. But you don't know what the network and things are demanding from them as well. You've always got to bear that in mind with TV programs, that there are producers, there are higher up studios, etc. involved, TV channels, and as a result, you need to be cautious, and you need to not necessarily think, oh, this team are fake, they're always going to be fake, but you need to wonder, is this team fake because of higher ups putting pressure on them? Which is why with Most Haunted, I always say, Carl should not investigate with that team because he is the producer of the program. And as the producer, he needs to see viewers and results, etc. And if that's through faking an activity, he's gonna fake to get the activity. So that's my stance on that. But I agree with Beardo. Danny Robbins is fantastic. I have seen 1 or 2 episodes of Uncanny. I've done an article on Danny Robbins and found his history in general to be really interesting. And then he did just kind of pop up out of nowhere He was doing bits and pieces of writing, and then he did the Battersea Poltergeist, and that's what kind of kickstarted his paranormal career, because that then led on to him doing Uncanny, and it is a great program, and I think that there needs to be more of that, which is why I did an article on him, because I was like, he's an important figure. I feel people need to know about him. And then Joe from Entity 7 Paranormal says he gets messages saying that he gets messages from people saying that they're going to such a place, and other teams have been there and it seems wild, and they ask his advice, and he says to lower their expectations, and then they later message him saying that they're upset as nothing happened, and that they wanted to blame the location or the location owner as they think the place is fake. And Joe then says he thinks that it's not on the owner or the actual location, but rather it's on whoever it was that put out a video saying that it was wild, because that's it's not a truthful representation of the actual place. It's not a true representation. So they're saying, "Oh, go here and you'll have all these noises." That's not how it is. So another one that I quoted directly was a comment from World to Rights, which Paul from Ghost on Trent read out. So the comment said, "Am I the odd one out here? I want the 100% truth. No nonsense, none at all. I can't believe people are saying you have to say that to make people watch," in terms of the clickbait. And Paul then replies saying that if they want the 100% truth, then YouTube's the wrong place. And you have to go out and get your own personal experience and investigation to get that 100% proof and 100% belief. And any of them could go out, capture an apparition on camera, but no one would believe it aside from those who captured it. And I agree with what he said there. I think that if you were to go out and you were to capture an apparition, there are so many fake things nowadays, and technology is getting so good with faking things that I don't think you'd be able to determine if it was fake. Now, I have limited knowledge of technology, so perhaps if you had the raw footage and you sent it to someone, they'd be able to look at that and go, "Oh yeah, that's absolutely real." But you see it with certain photos, for instance, where they're under debate because people have probably faked things and faked things very well, and as a result, no one really knows, and it muddies the whole thing. And it means that we're now in a place where we can't determine the real from the fake anymore because the fake is getting so good. And with things like AI, it's getting better to fake things. Like, the fakery is astounding. I mean, just look at films. A lot of the time, when you look at a film, there's so much CGI, green screen, effects. It looks real. You only know it's not real because it's a fantasy setting, as it were, and you know it's a film, which isn't real. But if someone took a clip from that film and showed it to someone and said, "Oh, this is real," sometimes you wouldn't be able to tell. The only way you can really tell with films is how it's shot. But if it was like a found footage film, for instance, you could show someone that and be like, "Oh, this is real. Can you believe this happened to those people?" And you wouldn't be able to tell because it's that good with the effects. So yeah, if someone did genuinely capture a full body apparition, no one would believe it. Although my own personal view as to a reason why people wouldn't believe it is, I think full body apparitions, I've been thinking about this in terms of how solid they are is probably the best way of thinking, because your traditional image of a ghost is transparent, or semi-transparent at least. Whereas I believe there are many instances where people could have encountered a ghost and not realised because they look solid, they look human. And I've encountered, through researching articles, a number of experiences from people where they've reported that kind of that kind of event occur. I've even got a friend at work who said they may very well have encountered two ghosts because they were waiting for a bus at the time, and I think it was a bus. It was a bus or a tram, something like that. And then two people in Victorian outfits walked up to them, and the weather was kind of raining, misty type thing at the time. But these two people in Victorian outfits walked up to them said, I think they said something along the lines of, "Oh, I hope you get home safe," something like that. And then my friend turned away from them, looked back, and they were gone. And they looked around. It was an open space, and there was nowhere they could have gone. And she was like, "Oh, that could have been a genuine paranormal experience. They could have genuinely been ghosts." But she didn't think of it at the time of interacting because they seemed solid. Sure, they were dressed in an odd way in Victorian outfits, but they weren't anything beyond what could have just been people in fancy dress, you know? So I think that's one reason why if you caught a full body apparition, people wouldn't believe it, because they wouldn't look at it and go, "That's a ghost." They look at it and go, "That's just someone that you've hired to dress up." So I think that's why they wouldn't believe it. I don't think ghosts particularly are the... maybe they walk through walls, who knows, but... And maybe they do appear, disappear, but I don't think they are seen in a transparent way. Granted, I don't know how they'd appear and disappear without some sort of fading in and out, but the world is a strange place. So maybe they do just spontaneously appear. Yeah, so Beardo then said YouTube is an entertainment platform run by Google, and you have to treat it as a Google search engine to some degree. And he's in agreement with the anger towards having to stoop to those levels to get the views. And you should just be able to say they went to a place and nothing happened. Which I agree. You do have to treat it like a search engine, and you do have to, kind of, like he says, stoop to those levels. So Joe from Entity 7 Paranormal and says, even though there are those who go out and show how it really is, it still doesn't show a complete picture of what they're doing, as they can only put so much in videos and only have so much time at a location. Even though they're honest, it still doesn't give a complete picture. And I agree there. I think this is why I say that I think the best case scenario for what teens should do is I think they should upload 2 videos. I think that they should upload the initial video, which is what we're seeing now with your dramatic title, image, dramatic music, suspense building, that kind of thing. The one for the views, the one for the entertainment. They should upload that, but then I think that a couple of weeks later they should upload the raw footage and be like, if you're interested, here's 5 hours of nothing. And because then that's the only way you get a full picture. That's the only way you are completely honest. And I think that honesty is key with the paranormal. And I think that if you had all these channels with this playlist of the absolute truth, sure, they might not get views on those videos, but at least it's there for people to see. And then it's not just everything being fake stuff on TV, fake stuff on YouTube, or dramatic real stuff on YouTube. It's then you've got another option of this is the real stuff, and you can watch it if you want. If you don't want to watch it, then fine. We've got this. This more entertaining version. But I also think it's good to put out a full thing, because there might be people out there who want to analyse it. There might be people out there who want to look through and go, okay, let's see what you've got. Let's see what evidence you've captured through each hour. Let's see how many instances occur per hour. So I think that it's beneficial to upload your full footage as well as a dramatic video for entertainment purposes. Keeps people interested in the paranormal. So Beardo says the only way to do it, completely honest, as Justin said, is you have to do it with multiple cameras, record everything, run from beginning to end, and upload every single camera individually through YouTube. And then he asks who's going to sit through that, and Joe says no one, as he does that, and he releases all of his unedited footage, which is very good for him to do, and that they only watch for a minute or 2. So I agree, that just goes over. Yeah, I agree with all that. Kenny then said it's hard to say with confidence that something's honest, and that most videos showing any videos they pick. Okay, yeah. So what he's saying here, I've written it in a weird way, or he said it in a weird way. I'm not too sure. But what he says here is he's basically saying any video someone puts out there It's only showing footage that they have chosen to include within that video. And so as a result, you're trying to be honest because you've done the investigation honestly and legitimately, but you're still not showing the full story to people as you've picked select clips, as it were, and put them together into what is essentially an hour-long highlights reel. And he said clickbait isn't only on YouTube, it's everywhere. And that he hates clickbait, and he thinks that there are other ways of drawing attention aside outright lying, which I agree. Although again, that kind of shows his high bar because he's referred to clickbait as outright lying. Now he may not think of all clickbait as outright lying, but he does refer to it there as that. And then Paul from Goes to Trent says he thinks people's attention span has lowered over the years through things like TikTok, YouTube Shorts, quick scrolling, and that as a result it has to catch your eye, and that thumbnail has to be captivating, and the title has to get clicks, and it happens all over, such as in news headlines. And I agree. I do think that people's attention span has shortened because it's honestly because of TikTok and YouTube Shorts and quick scrolling. I think that modern technology and phones have played a part. I think that there's an impatience to people, I think is the best way of putting it. I was born in 1998, and as a result, I kind of grew up on the precipice of modern technology. I'm just going to have a quick drink. And what I mean by the precipice of modern technology, oh my god, I spoke too soon then after having a drink. What I mean by that, with the precipice of modern technology, is I remember video, I remember little box TVs, I remember having to rewind tapes and the hassle of that. So I remember those things, and I remember a time without phones, at least how we know them today. I'm trying to remember like what phones were like back then in the late 90s and early 2000s. I remember, my current phone, I don't have it in grabbing reach at the moment, but my current phone is a Samsung Chat, which is basically a BlackBerry, which is an earlier phone. It's from 2012, but before then, I remember it was stuff like the Nokia, what was referred to as the Nokia brick, and like flip phones and nothing touchscreen, nothing like that. It was all buttons, and you had like the Snake game on there, and I remember all that stuff. I remember computers being introduced into my primary school, and I remember people discovering YouTube for the first time, and I remember, when it was started in 2005, and how accessible suddenly videos became through that, and remember just YouTube growing as a platform. So I remember kind of minimal technology, not nothing, but minimal, up until now. And as a result, I think people have very much so lost patience. Because back then, if you wanted to do anything at all, like let's take the Snake game as a good example. That was slow. That was a slow game. You're there pressing these tiny little buttons on your phone to make your snake gradually go around the thing. And it was a slow game which took ages, and it took ages to complete that game if you wanted to try and complete it. And if you went on the computer, it took ages for anything to load. I don't necessarily remember like download speeds as such, but I remember like stuff like Minecraft, for instance, downloading, and it took a while. But everything now, it's just instant. You just Google something, boof, it's there. You've got the answer. Whereas back then, you couldn't so much Google things, but you had to go and find books, and you had to properly research. I remember even secondary school, this is probably just the teachers trying to keep in good practice at this point, but researching World War II, and we had books in the library which we were advised to go and read from and to use as sources as opposed to Google, because they're like, you can't really trust the internet with the sources that you have on there. You have Like, if you look at it in a book, that's going to be correct. And I absolutely agree with that. Do my own research. But everything now, it's just so quick. It's just there for you. It's like in school when teachers used to say you'll never have a calculator in your pocket, and now everyone's got a phone with a calculator on it. As a result, people have become impatient, and the same goes for videos. So they're scrolling through Facebook. It's just information. Everyone's kind of been hit with an information overload, I would say, and kind of a sensory bombardment, which has just been introduced over time, but now it's just instant. Just everything you could want is just there. And as a result, people have kind of become accustomed to that. So if they watch a video or something and it's slow, they don't like that and they click away from it. Good example is TV programs. When the Book of Boba Fett was out, I like that series, and people at work like the series, but there was one friend I have who didn't like it because a couple of reasons, but one of the reasons was it was slow. It didn't have all the action he'd wanted in it. And that's kind of a good summary of the paranormal right now. You need the action. You basically need to make an investigation how TV and film works, where you need either good dialogue between your investigators or you need constant things happening. You need to keep up the sensory overload, the information bombardment, as it were, that people would experience when they're scrolling. So that's why videos often start with quick cuts of people going, oh my god, what was that? What was this? What was that? And then it leads on to the actual investigation where it's clips, again, of there's a bang, there's a noise, there's a sound, technology, something's lit up, a REM pod's gone off. And this is probably why people use those devices, because they're easily triggered by some sort of means. Like with REM pods, they're commonly done because they commonly do go off depending on the setting. And these things going off, it keeps that sensory overload because people watching going, oh, it's getting boring. Oh, the REM pod's suddenly gone off. So that's why that's done. Yeah, that was probably a bit of a tangent. I'm not sure. And now I've got to remember where I'm up to. Yeah, so it was Paul saying about the attention span. And then you get an important comment. Well, again, I say important comment. It's a comment from Wayne Dawson saying, question, if there's no real evidence of the paranormal, then what's the explanation for all of our paranormal encounters? This is a really good question, I think. And this is why I believe in the paranormal. Because I think that there's too much experienced by too many over the course of history and around the world for it to not exist. Now, is it just a case of everyone being duped by something or other? Quite possibly. But I think that it's also a case of it's legitimate. I think that, if enough people say the sky is blue, surely that means the sky is blue, as it were. Now, there could just be another explanation. For instance, at one point, everyone said that the sun revolved around the Earth, but then it was shown through science it was the other way around. And perhaps this is what it's like with the paranormal. And I think that one day we will reach a point where science and technology advances so that we can answer the question definitively of, does the paranormal exist, yes or no? Does an afterlife exist, yes or no? But I think that at the moment, it's not necessarily evidence, but it's an indication towards the paranormal being legitimate and existing in some form, whether we have correctly theorized about it or not. I do believe that there are spirits in some form that do exist around us in some other form, And Paul from Ghosts on Trent says that their own encounters and their own experiences are the explanation, which, along the same veins, I think, as to what I was describing of, the explanation is just that they've experienced it. It is, and so it is, And Kenny says it's a big question, and it's not a simple answer. And there's lots of misinterpretation, mistakes, optical illusions, audio illusions, and there's lots of personal experiences, which are, personal experiences are the most profound, but the worst evidence, as people can so easily be fooled, which they can. You can go to a rubbish magic show and still be amazed at some of the tricks, and so you can't rely on personal stories. You've got to try and replicate it and talk to others who may be able to explain. And I agree with him there. I've done an article on James Randi, for instance, and Harry Houdini, who were two magicians that got involved in the debunking side of things. And I think that to look into that angle and the magician's involvement with the paranormal is fantastic, because a magician knows better than anyone else how easily the human mind can be fooled. And yeah, Kenny says it there. He says, makes reference to magic tricks and audio illusions, optical illusions. The brain wants to make sense of what it experiences around it, and so it will fill in gaps and it will make things up which fit a mash between how the world is and your own beliefs and what sits right with you. So if you go to a paranormal event, for instance, and you believe in the paranormal and you see a shadow, your brain's not going to default to that wasn't a shadow. It will default to I've just seen a full body apparition. And then the moment you get that in your mind, the image of the shadow will change to be a person. You'll maybe make out a coat and a hat or something like that. And that's just how psychology works. And that's why when I investigate, and I think when others investigate, they should never rely on their eyes or their ears, any senses at all. They should always record it. I'm just hearing rustling and I'm just like, is there a spider? No, I think it's the thing. No. But yeah, so they... See, I've lost my train of thought now because I got distracted by a rustling sound, which I immediately thought was a spider. Again, trying to find it. It's about audio stuff and optical. Yeah, cameras. So that's why when investigating, you should always bring a camera. So you should always have a camera. You should always have audio equipment. Video and audio, crucial in investigation, because when you're there, you are going to hear things. You're going to see things. Your brain is then going to take that in and it's going to tweak it. Like I say, even if you think you hear a thing, it might be different from how you describe it to yourself. And that's why you have to be very, very careful with these things and make a note as soon as you can, because as time passes, your brain will change it. And so, this is why I have my journal, for instance, because if I experience something, I make a note as soon as I can, and if I remember it differently to how I've written it, what I remember is nonsense. What I've written in the journal is fact. And that's how video and audio equipment should be treated. Anything you capture through audio or video should be treated as what happened. If you hear something and you listen to it back and you're like, didn't capture on camera, it didn't happen. That's how you need to try and judge that. And same for if you've seen something. If you've seen something and a camera was pointed at it, but the camera doesn't pick it up, you've not seen anything. And that's something which people need to get into the mindset of, I think. Now, you could make a psychic argument. You could make an argument along the lines of psychic stuff. So I do believe psychic ability exists. I believe everyone is psychic to some degree, whether they realise it or not. And I do think that spirits can communicate with people through psychic means. They don't necessarily have to manifest visually in order for you to see them mentally. They could kind of project an image so strong that you may think you've seen it, but actually you've not. It's just a strong internal thought. That's my own belief around that. In which point, perhaps there is some validity to seeing things when the camera doesn't, but that's why you make notes of things. Because then if you do see something again, or if you... Good example, brilliant example of this. When I went to, I believe it was Carisbrooke Castle on the Isle of Wight, I had a paranormal experience there where, around the time anyway, I was kind of testing out with psychic ability. But I decided, in order to try and test it, I didn't know anything about this castle, and I walked around basically doing what psychics do in these places and just try and kind of sense stuff about the location, as it were, in terms of what could be haunting it and where they're haunting. There was a particular bedroom I walked into where I immediately thought someone's died in this room, and then I looked on the wall and it did say someone had died of the plague in there. But again, you could argue I may have seen it and not realised when I walked in, etc. Or it's kind of cliche, isn't it? When people die of plague, they're in a bed kind of thing. Although I didn't think of plague. But the particular experience in question, there was a bunch of steps leading up to a keep, and at the top of the keep there was a well. And I went up there, some people were up there at the time, they left, and I felt the urge to look down the well. Now I quite like looking down wells anyway, just to see how deep it goes down, so that wasn't anything out of the ordinary. But I looked down, I stood at the edge, and it was covered with a metal grid, so that I couldn't look right, well not so I couldn't look right, but it was covered with metal grid so that I couldn't fall down had I leant too far. So I started to look down this well, and I was kind of leaning over it. And then the more I looked down the well, the more I gained a strong image in my mind of a woman falling down the well. Now, I can't describe the woman. I don't think I made note of the woman either at the time. I've just made note of this experience. And again, it's one of those where it's like, I could picture a woman now, but I wouldn't be able to say that's the accurate description of what I saw at the time, because my mind's filling in gaps. But I saw this strong image of a woman falling down the well, and as I looked further down into the water, my eyes never met the water, but they I think came close to it. But I also gained an image of seeing a face looking back up at me. Again, can't describe the face, but I felt like I would see a face look back up. Now, I didn't see the woman falling. I didn't see the face. So if I had a camera there, it wouldn't have seen them. It would have just seen a well. But mentally, I saw the woman and I saw her face. And it was such a strong image and such a strong experience. And I was left feeling unnerved and not necessarily frightened. It was weird. It was uncomfortable. And as a result, I quickly left the keep and went back to my family. And I was somewhat shaken, not completely, but it was an intense experience. And it stuck with me. And I was like, that has to be something. So I Googled the castle's hauntings. And I discovered that there was a woman who fell down a well, not that well in the castle, it was a different well. But a woman fell down. It's still the same water system connecting it. But a woman fell down, and people have reported looking into the water and seeing a face looking back up at them. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. So, going back to what I was saying regarding equipment, etc., and taking and not trusting eyes and ears and taking what has been captured via technology as absolute isn't necessarily as great. You still need to take note of what you've experienced. And I believe that in those instances, that was a psychic, you might be able to say message from the spirit, or psychic detection. I'm not too sure on how best to say it, but you wouldn't have caught that by camera, but it's something I'd experienced, and it was something that I then Googled to find it was correct. Or at least it's something that others had reported, albeit at a different well. So that was always an interesting experience to me. And as a result, you need to take note of these things if they do happen. You need to just take note of it, say it for the camera in the moment so you know what you've taken note of is accurate, unless other people have seen it at the same time, at which point don't tell them about it. Everyone needs to write it down, and then you need to see if everyone's seen the same thing, because that would be very interesting, especially if the camera hasn't picked that up. Although there are other factors as to why that could happen. But yeah, that's my stance on all of that. So, Paul from Ghost on Trent then asked what happened if 4 people witnessed exactly the same thing at the same time, which links to what I just said. And Kenny said, so, and this is a direct quote from Kenny, he said, so, if you have 4 people, the first thing that needs to be done is you immediately have to separate them. If you have them all together and you're getting on scene hours or days or weeks later, it's invalid. It's useless. I mean, you can get their story, and it's a cool story, bro, but that's all it is, a story. You need to separate these witnesses as soon as possible before they have a chance to talk about it. And Kev says he calls it a spontaneous witness statement. And the second it happens, he gives them a pen and paper and tells them to go to a different corner and write what they saw without saying a word to one another. And Kenny elaborates, saying they'll influence one another. They'll fill in gaps. They'll take stories or details from another person and add to their own story. And he's seen it time and time again with studies on memory and eyewitness recall that different descriptions mean different things to different people. And if someone says that a book came off the shelf and flew across the room, it could mean it fell off the shelf not that far away, or it catapulted off the shelf across the room and into another room. You have to separate it, and you need to separate the people and ask clarifying questions. A good example is when people say they saw an apparition in period dress. It could mean so many different things, because, period, it could be any time period. And he said if there are 4 people, said they also a shadow figure at the end of the hall, then that is just one story. And it doesn't tell you anything, that they need to be separated and questioned as soon as it happened. And Kev says that you can go to a place with history, and then you'll know the history, and you can experience something and assume it relates to what they know of the place's history and its hauntings. It means nothing to him when people say it wasn't just them that saw it. And he says it could have been an actual physical event that 4 people witnessed, such as a shadow. That doesn't mean that it's a shadow figure or an apparition. It could just be a shadow due to light going through a window, and it's why replication is important. Now, the worst thing is when someone says they're a paranormal investigator and fails to investigate what they claim happened. I absolutely agree, and I go into good detail in the article about this with eyewitness recall, because I did A-level psychology and we did learn about eyewitness recall in that. And there's a study which I detailed in the article I wrote about how different people were shown footage of a car crash, and when asked about the footage, they were asked how fast the cars were going when they crashed, except the word crashed was replaced for the different people. So the word crashed would be replaced with bumped, collided, smashed, things like that. Flew. And they found in that study people who were asked how far were the cars going when they crashed reported higher speeds than, for instance, when they were asked how fast were the cars going when they bumped. Because bumped is not as extreme of a word. It puts an image in your mind of a slow collision, and literally just a bump. Whereas crash, smash, anything like that, full on, you've got bits flying everywhere, that's the image that's put into your mind. And that affects your memory of what you've seen. And that is what the study found the result of, that you can't trust your memory, and that you can be influenced by things as small as words used in a question, and that what you remember isn't actually what you remember, well, it's what you remember, but it's not what happened necessarily. And so you've got to be very careful, and that's why I say that if you experience something, you need to, if you're on camera, you need to either say it immediately, because that way you've got a documentation of it, or you need to write it down immediately, depending on the context. And when you're saying it or writing it, you need to be as detailed as possible. And this is why whenever I've experienced something as well, I've texted various people. Granted, I think those texts are lost now because I don't think I screenshotted them, which was short-sighted of me. But I have made note in my journal about things, which isn't 100% accurate to the moment, depends on how close to the moment it is. But the longer it goes, the more likely that memory is wrong, or just different in some way, and you'll never know which way. So it's a good point that Kenny and Kev make about eyewitness recall, and it's one of the big reasons. I mean, there were a number of points in this discussion where I was sitting through it not reading, I was listening to it, and there are a number of points, like I say, where they go through and they discuss these kinds of things, and I was sitting there and I was thinking, I have to do an article on this, and I had to do probably multiple articles on this, because it is a lot of good detailed conversation that occurs, and that detailed conversation would otherwise be lost in YouTube, and it would be lost within the 3 hour long video. I mean, I know this video has been a couple of hours as it is at this point, but there is the article that you can still find, which is why I've done the articles. Nice short ways of breaking things down. This has just gone a bit in depth with my own thoughts on things. And if you want to read all of my thoughts, and if you want to read everything that I've just described in this video, and if you want to watch the actual live stream that Beardo did, you can do that on the Beardo Get Scared channel, or you can go to the trueparanormal.blogspot.com, and you can read the articles that I've put on there about the live stream, where it documents my full thoughts on everything discussed, and it probably won't take you 2 hours to read. At least I hope it wouldn't. The aim for those articles is for them to be shorter, although this one was chunkier. This was like 6 pages, I think. Went from notes page 13 to 18. So 6 pages worth of notes on this segment. So that is it pretty much for what I've described there. There will be part 4. Yeah, part 4 will be out this Friday. I don't know what date that is for anyone watching this after the Friday. If it's after, you can search it. You'll be able to find it all there. It's under a tag of paranormal discussions on the database. But yeah, you can find that there, and then on Monday, I'm hoping I should get it done out on time. Sometimes I know I've been a little bit late with articles I've published, but I'll be publishing a haunted location article about a haunted location in Nottinghamshire, more specifically in Nottingham itself, which it might be a long article. I started writing the notes on it earlier today because I'm on holiday at the end of next week. For a week, so I'm trying to get a backlog of articles so that I don't go a week without posting. And it seems like a chunky one. It might also be a couple of locations in one. We will see. Hopefully it won't be. I like to try and keep things separate. It depends on how the hauntings are, I think, regarding which places or place I'm writing about. But there's a main one, which I'm doing. And then next week's Friday will be Beardo Live Part 5, which will be the final part of me documenting his live stream. The following week, I don't know what the location is yet, I've not properly looked into it, but the Friday will then be the final ever discussion on this live stream, like the final, because even though I'll have all the live stream documented, I won't have the reaction documented. So that Friday will be the kind of Beardo Live, the reaction type article, where there are 3 teams that I will discuss in that article, which 2 of them have directly responded to Beardo's live stream. One of which is Dead Cold, another one is Mr. Grey. But then another one, which I saw, they posted something on Facebook a few days after Beardo had done his live. They don't mention Beardo's live, but the topics they covered in their Facebook post, it's similar to the points mentioned in Beardo's live. So I'm like, it could have seen it. So it's worth mentioning. And that's the Cornish Ghost Whispers, which have done that particular one. So I'll discuss those 3 teams in that Friday's article. Obviously, I won't go into depth on the team themselves, but rather their response to Beardo's live and to certain discussion points, because like I said, that's how the Cornish Ghost Whispers relates. So I hope that you've all enjoyed the live stream. Again, thank you very much to the likes of Beardo from Beardo Get Scared and Kev from Kev Paranormal. They shared my article. If anyone ever shares my articles, please tag me in it because I want to thank you for sharing my articles. And I will only see it by chance if you share it. It won't necessarily come up for me. I'll either look at the viewing figures and be like, oh, that's a bit high, I wonder if someone shared it. Or I'll just so happen to come across the fact you've shared it. So if anyone else shares, please tag me so that then I know, and then I can thank you at the end of articles, etc. And in the monthly appreciation post that I'm doing. And thank you as well to Justin from the Paranormal Monkey podcast for commenting really kind things on this video and for completely throwing me off twice in this video. So, yeah, even though he said sorry, I don't know if he is, but yeah, it was still very good to have that, because like I say, I don't have much in the way of interaction with what I do. When I do, it's positive. I've not had anyone saying, oh, what you're doing is a load of nonsense, etc. But it means a lot, especially when it's people to do with the articles that I've written, which is why I was so over the moon. For instance, when I did the Most Haunted review, and not only was it accepted into the official Most Haunted page, but Yvette Fielding liked it, Glenn Hunt followed me. That all meant the world to me then. Tamworth Castle sharing my Tamworth Castle article and liking it and things means the world to me now. And so anyone that that I view as high profile, etc. So like Beardo and Kev sharing the articles, anyone who does that I view as, it's a big achievement for me, and it does mean a lot. And so any comment just saying anything at all about the article means a lot to me. Even if it's improvement points on, oh, I think could do this a bit better through this, that still would mean a lot, because quite often I look at the articles and I'm like, oh, is it as good as it can be, or can it be improved? But obviously I don't know, because I don't get all that much feedback on it. So thank you very much to Justin for I'll actually read out his comments while they're on the screen there, just to give context for what I'm on about. So the first one he said was, hey there, I'll start that again. Hey there, just wanted to say well done for your blog. The level of detail was incredible. Thank you for your kind comments too, Justin. And then the next comment said, so sorry for throwing you off. Now I've probably done it again. Seriously, you wrote so much and made so many great comments of your own. I really appreciate it. Keep doing what you're doing, because you talk a lot of sense yourself. I also agree there's a lot of naff paranormal stuff out there and find it hard to watch most of what's on YouTube. And then he says that he gets it, he understands it, and he hates clickbait, and kind of jokes about getting possessed by demons, etc. So thank you very much for that interaction. It does mean a lot. And anyone who comments, I may not answer the comment immediately, because when I do these lives, I try and just read through the notes I've done to try and keep it flowing a bit. And as you can see, when comments come through, it derails it a bit. But yeah, it's always much appreciated when anyone likes, comments, shares anything like that. It's always appreciated. So yeah, thank you very much to everyone who's watched, and thank you to anyone who may have shared this or has shared other articles, etc. And has followed in general. It does mean a lot to me. So thank you very much, and I'll go and live stream on TikTok for an hour. Might not do it immediately, depends on how much charge this tablet is on. But I will be live streaming on TikTok, as I do want to upload a version, like a condensed, shorter version of this onto TikTok. So I'll be there shortly. So thank you very much, and goodbye. Hopefully this doesn't